Fake HOA cops kidnapped my wife, but didn't know she's CIA. Hello everyone, and thank you for joining the HOA Karen Files channel. Today, I'm about to tell you a story that's not only dramatic, but also reflects serious issues that not everyone realizes in their everyday lives. Have you ever wondered if your peaceful neighborhood could be hiding dark secrets? Could the seemingly harmless regulations of your HOA, homeowners association, be masking dangerous criminal schemes? This story will make you rethink what's really going on in your community. Imagine a quiet residential area with neat houses and friendly neighbors. In a place like this, everyone lives peacefully, following the rules and always helping each other. However, like all great stories, darkness always lurks beneath the surface. When an ordinary man, living in his neighborhood, discovers that his wife is not who he thought she was, but actually a CIA agent, an underground war begins. The story of how the Elmwood Gardens neighborhood was infiltrated and manipulated by an international criminal organization under the guise of the HOA will shock you. Let's explore how seemingly small HOA regulations, unreasonable fines, and unexpected inspections were actually tools used to carry out serious criminal schemes. In this story, you'll witness tense mind games, unexpected action scenes, and a shocking truth about the people we often consider ordinary in our community. But not only that, you'll see the power of community and unity when faced with deception and injustice. Before we dive into the story, I'd love for you to comment below and share your thoughts on what's happening. Have you ever thought that your community could be exploited like this? Could those small, insignificant rules in your neighborhood be hiding bigger issues? Leave your comments, and I'll be happy to read and discuss them with you. Now, sit back, relax, and enjoy this captivating story to the end. You won't want to miss the intense twists and surprises I'm about to tell. Let's see how a community stood up to face the truth and fought against imposters, protecting the true values of life. Don't forget to subscribe to the HOA Karen Files channel to follow upcoming stories. And now, let's start the journey of discovering the truth about Elmwood Gardens. My life with Sarah had been smooth for the past 8 years since we got married in the fall of 2017. Sarah and I met through a mutual friend, and from the first time we met, I knew she was special. She wasn't like the other women I had met before, simple, composed, with a gentle smile and a patience that I deeply appreciated. We both enjoyed a quiet life, sunny Sunday mornings with ginger lemon tea, and cozy dinners after a long day of work. We didn't have children. There were times we discussed it, but work and personal plans always delayed the decision. Sarah wasn't in a hurry about anything, which made me feel at ease because she never made any important decision hastily. We had been living in Elmwood Gardens for 3 years, and before this event occurred, I thought this neighborhood was the perfect place to build a long-term life, a peaceful place where we could find tranquility among the lush gardens and fresh air. Every day, Sarah and I had small routines that I believed were a perfect harmony in our married life. In the morning, I would take care of the garden while Sarah made ginger lemon tea, a habit that had become her specialty. She loved herbal teas, and ginger lemon tea was our favorite. After that, we'd sit outside on the porch, chatting about trivial things, the weather, the plants in the garden, or little neighborhood stories. It was the peaceful life I thought would last forever. One quiet Sunday, I sat in my favorite armchair, enjoying a rare moment of relaxation. Sarah sat on the porch, holding a cup of her usual ginger lemon tea. The scent of the tea blended with the gentle sunlight of the morning. We just sat there, in no rush, enjoying the peace that suburban life brought. I occasionally glanced at Sarah, seeing her smile gently before returning to the book she was reading. It was the perfect picture of a simple family life. We had shared moments like this for the past 3 years in Elmwood Gardens, a neighborhood where everything moved slowly and peacefully. But then, that peace was shattered suddenly and unexpectedly. The screech of tires broke the silence from the end of the alley. A black van with no license plates sped into our driveway at an alarming speed. The van skidded along the sidewalk before screeching to a halt right in front of our house. Before I could think, 3 men in tactical gear stepped out of the van, quickly advancing toward us. Each of them wore black outfits, equipped with tactical gear that looked like something out of an action movie, and they carried weapons. HOA compliance check, one of the men shouted, his voice deep and firm. The 3 of them immediately stepped onto the porch, not saying another word. I couldn't react fast enough, My eyes locked on their tactical vests and the guns hanging at their hips. Unbelievable. In a peaceful neighborhood like Elmwood Gardens, I never thought I'd witness something like this. I stayed frozen, unable to take my eyes off the scene. Sarah remained still, her gaze fixed straight ahead, showing no sign of fear. And then, before I could understand what was happening, one of the men lunged forward, pulling Sarah off the bench, forcefully, but not hurriedly. She didn't scream, didn't resist, she just looked at me calmly, then winked coldly. That was the moment I realized something was terribly wrong. It felt like everything around me was spinning. Sarah, my wife, who was always calm and cheerful, was being taken away without a word of protest. She wasn't afraid. She wasn't screaming like I imagined. She just looked at me as if this was part of a prearranged plan. A cold sensation ran down my spine, and then I realized I didn't really know my wife. Everything I thought was peaceful, a simple marriage, turned out to be a facade. I had never known Sarah's true past. From that moment on, everything became blurry and confusing, and I began to ask myself, who is my wife? And why was she being taken away so coldly? Panic and loss of control overwhelmed me as the black van disappeared from sight. My heart pounded. What had just happened was too sudden, too unexpected, and unbelievable. Sarah had been taken without a hint of resistance. I stood there, my hands trembling as I grabbed my phone, my mind racing with 1,000 unanswered questions. My eyes fixed on the bench where Sarah had just sat, where I could still see the remnants of what was left from the moment she last sat there. Her ginger lemon tea, a crumpled cushion, and the heavy silence hanging in the air. I dialed the police in a near panic. The calm voice of the female operator on the other end remained steady, but when I told her that Sarah had been kidnapped by people impersonating HOA police officers, her tone suddenly shifted. We've received reports about impersonators operating in your area. Don't do anything rash, stay at home. The police will arrive shortly. That's when I realized the situation was more than just a typical kidnapping. Impersonators? I muttered, sensing something far worse was waiting ahead. I couldn't stay still. My heart raced, and my hands started searching for something to calm the overwhelming panic. I ran inside, trying to pull myself together, but there was a strange compulsion urging me to keep searching. There was something I didn't know. Maybe I missed some sign. Something caught my attention, and then I saw it. A small hidden compartment in our office, behind a false wall, not easily noticeable. A strange control panel I had never seen before. I struggled to open it, feeling like I was breaking something important. When the drawer creaked open, I found a secure laptop, a phone unlike any I had ever seen, and a carefully written letter. My hands trembled as I opened the letter, the light from the desk lamp casting shadows on the black and white text. Sarah wrote, "If you're reading this letter, the worst has happened. Don't panic, but I've been taken for a reason you won't understand right now. I'm not who you think I am, and I certainly am not just your wife. I'm a CIA agent, involved in an undercover mission to investigate an international crime syndicate that the HOA in our neighborhood is involved with. What you've seen is not a coincidence. Everything happening is part of a larger plan that you can't know until it all comes to light. Karen and the people in the HOA, they're not just controlling our little lives, they're part of a much more complex network. I can't explain everything now, but trust me, everything is going according to plan. You will know everything when the time is right." The letter slipped from my hand. Sarah, my wife, wasn't just the simple woman I thought. She had been living a secret life right under my nose, and I never knew. Everything I thought was normal suddenly became an illusion. And what made me even more panicked was that, if everything Sarah wrote in that letter was true, I was just beginning a dangerous game I wasn't prepared for. The overwhelming feeling I had now was utter emptiness. The image of Sarah being dragged away, her look when she winked at me. It was all a signal from her, but I couldn't understand it at that moment. And now, as I read the letter, I realized I had been deceived, or rather, I had been living in an illusion, even while sharing this life with Sarah. I sat down heavily in the chair, my mind spinning after reading Sarah's letter. The entire world around me suddenly became hazy and confusing. Everything I had once thought was normal in my life now felt like a facade, a layer of camouflage for a dark secret I had been completely unaware of. Sarah, the wife I loved and trusted, turned out to be a CIA agent. Everything she did, everything she said, had a purpose, and I was just a part of her plan. I couldn't sit still anymore. A sense of panic and helplessness overwhelmed me. Sarah had kept a secret too large from me, and now I had to uncover the truth. At this moment, I was left with only one choice: to delve deeper into what Sarah had left behind for me. She had left behind a secure laptop, but I hesitated to open it right away. It felt like I was intruding into a world that didn't belong to me. But when the truth can no longer be hidden, I had no choice but to face it. I powered up the laptop, and as expected, it asked for a password. I tried a few fixed codes I thought might be Sarah's, but it didn't work. Then I remembered something Sarah had once said when we were watching a spy movie together. In this world, the most ordinary things can sometimes be the key to every secret. I tried entering the name of our pet cat, and strangely, it unlocked immediately. The laptop's control panel appeared, filled with a series of data files. I began to open each one, my eyes glued to the screen, not daring to blink. Among the files, I found surveillance images of the neighborhood, dense financial reports, and suspicious trips taken by Karen, the HOA president I thought was strict but harmless. These documents revealed a shocking truth. The HOA we lived in wasn't just an organization managing small housing rules. It was a cover for an international criminal organization laundering money through legitimate companies. The garden repair contractors and landscaping services the HOA often worked with were mere front companies, and enormous sums of money had been transferred into hidden accounts. Each file I opened made me more alarmed. The financial reports showed a close connection between the HOA and international organizations, with money transfers from shell companies overseas. Karen's and other HOA members' trips weren't business trips. They were related to money deals with international partners, those behind a global money laundering scheme. One of the surveillance images I opened left me stunned. It was a photo of Karen, but it wasn't an ordinary photo. In this photo, she was meeting with a strange man in a luxurious restaurant, and I realized that the man was one of the police officers I had seen the previous day. This only deepened my confusion. What I had thought was normal, those absurd regulations about plants, the unreasonable fines from the HOA, turned out to be pieces of a larger plan I had never had the chance to understand. When I closed the laptop, my feelings weren't just of shock, but also of anger. Anger that I had been kept in the dark about such a huge secret. Anger that my wife had lived in this neighborhood for a whole year, and I had no idea. I sat there, staring at the documents Sarah had left behind, asking myself, what had she been doing all this time? How had I not noticed? I couldn't stop thinking about everything I had just discovered. The documents Sarah left behind were just the tip of the iceberg. I felt like I had been pulled into a story I had never known, and now I had to face the reality that everything I thought was normal was just a perfect cover. But as I thought more about what Sarah had written in her letter, one thought suddenly flashed in my mind. Were the people around me involved in everything that was happening? Elmwood Gardens had always seemed like a peaceful neighborhood with friendly neighbors, each with a unique characteristic that I thought was very normal. Bob, the grumpy old man living at the end of the alley, was always making it difficult for the kids to play near his garden. I always thought he was just an old man who didn't like noise. Then there was Priya, the young girl who walked her dog around the neighborhood every morning. She always smiled and greeted everyone, seemingly nothing special other than caring for her dog. And George, the neighborhood mailman, who always stood by the gate, delivering the mail with a gentle smile as if nothing unusual was happening. But now, as I reflected on it, those people weren't as normal as I thought. I dug further into the documents Sarah had left and found some important information. Bob, Priya, and George, they were all listed in the secret files Sarah had kept. And the horrifying thing was, they were all CIA agents, working under Sarah's direction. Each of them had a specific role in the intelligence network Sarah had set up in this neighborhood. Bob was responsible for gathering information on HOA's financial transactions. Priya was investigating Karen's and other HOA members' diplomatic ties, while George was in charge of monitoring transactions and transferring confidential information through unassuming means. All three of them had very specific and crucial tasks in the investigation Sarah was carrying out. The feeling I had now was indescribable. I had been living next to spies without knowing it. The people I thought were ordinary neighbors were actually key players in an international intelligence operation. I began to realize that everything I thought was peaceful in Elmwood Gardens had only been a layer of protection hiding dangerous activities beneath. But I didn't have time to think about all this. I needed to act. Sarah had been taken, and I had to do everything I could to rescue her. As I flipped through the remaining documents, I saw that Sarah had planned this out in great detail. She had prepared a strategy to dismantle the HOA's security system, and I was the one who had to execute that plan. With the help of Bob, Priya, and George, I joined in a daring rescue mission. Each person in this team had special skills and experience. Bob, as the intelligence gatherer, would help me identify weaknesses in HOA's financial system. Priya, with her knowledge of the community's relationships, would help me infiltrate meetings and create distractions to pull attention away from the area we needed to attack. And George, the mailman, would help me deliver information and set up communication between the groups during the rescue. Our plan was very clear. First, we had to infiltrate HOA's security system and disable all surveillance cameras, all security devices in the area, to create a gap in their protection. Once there was no external surveillance, we would have the chance to rescue Sarah from the hands of the fake police officers holding her. I felt some anger and disappointment because I hadn't recognized what was happening right in front of me all this time, but now I had no choice but to join Sarah's plan. And with the help of the people I thought were ordinary, I would do everything I could to rescue her, because I couldn't let her suffer alone in this fight. I no longer had time to think too much. Sarah had been taken and was being held captive, but her plan was fully prepared. Everything was ready to be executed. I couldn't just stand by and watch her in danger without doing anything. With the help of the intelligence team Sarah had set up in the neighborhood, I began to take part in the rescue plan. We weren't just facing the fake HOA police officers. We were up against Karen and the international criminals she led. Sarah's team had set up a meticulous strategy to dismantle HOA's security system. The entire neighborhood, from the surveillance cameras to the communication systems, was disabled. Now, we had our opportunity. I stood in the shadows, looking toward the clubhouse, where I knew Sarah was being held. The team members had taken their positions. Bob, Priya, and George had completed their tasks, and now it was our turn. Everything had been carefully calculated, but none of us could have predicted that this confrontation would become a brutal battle. The entire HOA area had now turned into a tense battlefield, where every move could decide life or death. Sarah, her agents, and I had prepared meticulously. Everything had been planned out. Every step, every movement had to be flawless. Despite being outnumbered, we would never give up. First, Bob, with his extensive tactical experience, took the strategic position. He stood high, observing every movement of the enemy. One of the HOA police rushed towards us, but just as he did, Bob fired a shot at the tree near him, creating a loud noise that distracted the enemy. At that moment, Priya, quick as a panther, leaped out from behind, swiftly overpowering the enemy before he could react. Sarah and I moved toward the center of the area, where Karen and her henchmen were gathering. By now, our team had created an impenetrable formation. However, this confrontation wasn't over yet. Karen stood at the center, looking at us with calculating eyes. "This is the end of you," Karen said, though her voice lacked the power it once had. She gestured to the remaining HOA police to prepare, but we were ready. Sarah and I charged forward, not giving them a chance to react. The first enemy rushed at me, but I quickly dodged his attack. I spun around, delivering a powerful kick to his stomach, knocking him off balance. Then, I grabbed his hand, making him drop his gun. "Don't make me use this," I warned, my voice cold but determined. At the same time, Sarah confronted Karen. Karen continued to resist, but Sarah kept the upper hand. She used her skills, landing a quick and powerful kick that pushed Karen back, though it wasn't enough to knock her down. They stood facing each other, their eyes locked, as if each knew that the one who made a mistake would pay the price. Meanwhile, Bob and Priya continued battling the remaining HOA police officers. Priya, with her agility, trapped one enemy in a net she had prepared earlier. He struggled, but couldn't escape. Bob stood behind, calmly observing everything, constantly devising strategies to ensure we didn't get cornered. Karen, realizing the situation was slipping beyond her control, turned to look at Sarah and me with eyes full of fury. "You can't win," she hissed. But just then, a shot rang out, fired into the air. George, the mailman, bravely stepped out from behind, his gun still aimed but steady. "Enough, Karen," George said, his voice calm but filled with authority. "This ends today." We had surrounded all the exits. With no way out, Karen lowered her gun, accepting defeat. The remaining HOA police also stopped, no longer wanting to resist. The only sound now was the heavy silence, punctuated by our rapid breaths in the tense air. We had won without losing anyone. No bloodshed, no deaths. Just strategy, determination, and the power of unity. The criminals were captured, and the entire dark scheme of the HOA was exposed. Karen and her henchmen were bound, no longer resisting. Our team, under Sarah's leadership, had completed the mission. We had not only rescued Sarah, but also uncovered the truth about the criminal organization, and most importantly, we had protected the values we all believed in. As everything quieted down, Sarah stood in front of me, her eyes filled with emotion. "We did it," she said, a slight smile crossing her lips. I looked at her, sighed deeply, and in that moment, I realized that even though everything that had happened was tense and dangerous, we had done the right thing. And that was the most important part. The battle was over, but its aftermath still echoed in the heart of Elmwood Gardens. Karen and her accomplices had been arrested, but what they left behind was more than just temporary wounds on the neighborhood. They had built an underground empire over the years, using the seemingly harmless HOA regulations to launder money, commit fraud, and oppress innocent residents. As the police and CIA agents cleaned up the aftermath, the people in the neighborhood began to realize the horrifying truth. The peace they had lived in for so many years was nothing more than a disguise for a sophisticated criminal organization. The next day, a special HOA meeting was held. Karen no longer sat in that seat of power. Her henchmen were detained, awaiting trial. Other members of the HOA who had either been involved in the scheme or turned a blind eye to its illegality now faced serious charges. Some were under investigation for bribery, while others were accused of being involved in the international crime network. A thick curtain of deceit had been torn apart, and the truth had been exposed. Looking back, I couldn't believe I was standing there, in a room where I had once been just an ordinary resident, now about to make a pivotal decision for this community. After Sarah left her mission, and with Karen's downfall, I was the only one elected as the new HOA president. The people in the neighborhood looked at me, unsure of what to do, but their eyes were filled with curiosity and hope. I didn't know exactly how I ended up in this position, but I understood clearly that it was no longer time to continue the harsh rules that Karen had imposed for so many years. As the new HOA president, I realized that this neighborhood needed change. We had all become too accustomed to the unreasonable fines for mailbox colors, for trees, or for hosting family gatherings. We had lived in an atmosphere of fear and pressure, where everything had to conform to strict rules that no one truly understood the reason behind. I began working immediately. First, I canceled all the harsh and unreasonable HOA rules. No more fines for mailbox colors, no more ridiculous checks on trimming trees or hosting parties. Instead, I proposed a new program, one that aimed to make Elmwood Gardens a real community, where people didn't just live next to each other, but were also connected to one another. We organized community events, starting with the first Neighborhood Freedom Day Festival. Everyone in the neighborhood participated, from grumpy old Bob at the end of the alley to the young families that had just moved in. Each family brought food, games, and fun activities. No more invisible walls built by regulations. No more homes shrouded in loneliness. People began to connect, talk, and create new memories. No more tense meetings, no more authoritarian leaders. Everyone could speak up and contribute ideas. Honestly, I never thought I would become the HOA president, but when I stood there, in the middle of the neighborhood, watching everyone laughing and playing together, I knew I had done the right thing. Sarah was no longer here to direct me, but I felt like she was still beside me, guiding every decision I made. She had taught me that the strength of a community isn't in the power of one individual, but in the bonds shared between everyone. The Neighborhood Freedom Day was a resounding success, and it was just the beginning of a larger transformation. The days when I thought I was just a temporary resident in this neighborhood now seemed distant. I understood that we, the people living here, were the ones who could create the change. And when I looked at the colorful gardens, the cozy homes, and the smiles on the neighbors' faces, I knew Elmwood Gardens had changed forever. No more senseless battles, no more ridiculous regulations, just a strong, united community full of hope for the future. After everything that had happened, I looked back and felt a strange sense of happiness. When I first moved to Elmwood Gardens, I thought I would live a quiet, uneventful life. But life proved to me that sometimes peace is just a thin veil. We can't live in indifference or ignore what's happening around us. It's those small, seemingly harmless communities that can sometimes hide dangerous criminal schemes, and it's up to us, the residents, to protect each other and work together to build a better living environment. Elmwood Gardens is no longer just a place where I pass the days. It has become a true community, where people don't just share living space but share care, affection, and responsibility with one another. From those neighbors I once thought were nothing special, we are now one big family, always ready to help each other. We have overcome the greatest challenge this neighborhood has faced and rebuilt an ideal living environment, where everyone can be free, happy, and safe. I also learned that in this day and age, we can't afford to overlook any signs of abnormality. People who seem ordinary may sometimes harbor terrifying schemes, and only vigilance and a strong sense of community will help us recognize and respond in time. We must always stay alert, protect one another, and never let anyone exploit our ignorance to carry out bad deeds. What happened has taught me that the truth can always be hidden, but once we unite, we can expose any fraud. And if you're looking for stories about hidden truths in your community, don't forget to follow my channel, HOA Karen Files. Together, we will explore many untold stories, the secrets in neighborhoods you never imagined. Don't miss out on these thrilling and surprising videos, where I continue to bring you stories of how communities can defeat evil forces and protect the true values. Subscribe to HOA Karen Files now so you don't miss any important information. Together, we will continue to build a strong, united community that will never be deceived.